Ladies and gentlemen, this is TVP World. I'm your host Benjamin Lee, and welcome aboard the Eastern Express. For Ukraine, winter isn't just a season, it's a strategic nightmare. Every year, as the temperature drops, Vladimir Putin predictably tightens its grip on Europe's energy supply. Now, Ukraine, historically dependent on Russian gas, has spent a great deal of time trying to cut loose from that toxic dependency. And now Kyiv is betting on Azerbaijani gas to help break that cycle. Ukraine made a small yet crucial step in an energy chess game, securing gas imports from Baku. The initial volume might seem trivial, but the strategic implications are huge. Could Azerbaijani gas be the future safeguard against Russia's energy blackmail? Well, let's explore why every cubic meter counts when Vladimir Putin is your neighbor. Here's a look at our latest report to find out more.
Ukraine is looking to diversify its gas supply. In the wake of the Russian invasion, Ukraine's gas situation has become quite difficult, and it has become a priority for Kyiv to distance itself from Moscow and its gas empire. But the problem runs deeper. A series of devastating Russian missile strikes earlier this year had wrecked Ukraine's domestic gas production and led to a shortage of the resource. A new breakthrough has occurred in this Ukrainian effort, as the country recently signed its first Trans-Balkan gas deal with Azerbaijan. Ukraine will import a small but important volume of Azeri gas. A first test run will take place soon and will go through the Bulgaria-Romania-Ukraine corridor. It is incredibly important to Ukraine that this gas is produced by Azerbaijan or any other country that is not Russia in the broader scheme of things, as purchasing Russian gas, even indirectly, would amount to fueling the Russian war effort. Although the Ukrainian side is confident that this round of gas supply is controlled by Azerbaijan, Ukrainian experts have warned in the past that Russian gas could be present in deliveries from the south of Europe. Since the start of the war, but especially in recent months, Russian attacks have been focused on crippling Ukraine's energy sector. Unfortunately, Moscow's forces have had a degree of success with this strategy. A Ukrainian energy analysis company has noted that gas reserves were 13.9% down compared with the same period last year, and we're at the lowest in the last 12 years.
And now let's zone in on the East Planning portion of our show. Since the beginning of the Russian full-scale invasion of Ukraine, the geopolitical landscape surrounding the Russian Federation has seen some shifts. In particular, its relation with former close allies like Azerbaijan have taken a turn for the worse, which could benefit Ukraine.
Ukraine and Azerbaijan have had cordial relations since the fall of the Soviet Union and the declarations of independence from both countries. Nonetheless, Azerbaijan has always been far closer to Russia on the international stage, mostly because of its deep economic and military ties with the larger country. Yet recent developments between Ukraine and Azerbaijan may be a signal that things might be about to change. Relations between Baku and Moscow hit an all-time low in the wake of the crash of an Azerbaijani Airlines passenger plane, with the Azerbaijani side blaming the Russians for the incident. Azerbaijan has also sent humanitarian aid to Ukraine worth millions of dollars in the past. More recently, however, there have been reports that Ukraine is being portrayed far more positively in Azerbaijan's information space, which in turn has led to some growing sympathy for the Ukrainians' plight. Some observers believe that Baku may take further steps to deepen ties with Ukraine, especially since the latter is seeking new energy partners. As for whether Azerbaijan will perhaps support Ukraine militarily, that seems out of the question.
And now let's take a look at the issue in greater detail. Currently, Azerbaijani gas is flowing through a test route via Bulgaria and Romania into Ukraine, a path demonstrating potential viability and long-term promise. Opening this new corridor diversifies Ukraine's energy sources, creating a lifeline independent of Russian influence. It's like having an emergency exit. Even if you don't use it often, knowing it's there is critical. Energy Minister Svetlana Hentchuk underscored this point, emphasizing that while immediate volumes might be small, the geopolitical implications are anything but. In her words, this is another clear example of successful diversification, which in plain English translates to we're not placing all our bets on Putin behaving himself. Why Azerbaijan and why now? Well, Azerbaijan, led by President Ilham Aliyev, has made clear it's keen to ramp up gas production further, already supplying 10 European Union countries. The potential for expanded cooperation is substantial, even if Azerbaijan's existing contract currently limits immediate availability. But here's an intriguing twist. Ukraine and Azerbaijan are reportedly discussing renewable energy projects that could, in the long run, free up additional Azerbaijani gas supplies for export to Ukraine. Think of it as strategic energy synergy. helping Azerbaijan modernize its energy sector, thus liberating more gas for Ukraine. There's another important angle here. This new Azerbaijani gas route complements other recent diversification efforts. Since June, Ukraine has also been importing American liquefied natural gas routed through Greece, Bulgaria, Romania, and Moldova. Naftogaz's broader goal is to secure approximately 6 billion cubic meters of gas by winter. And these proactive steps underline a hard-earned lesson from Russia's invasion. Energy independence is as vital as military strength in modern geopolitics. Small moves today build strategic strength tomorrow. Kyiv reduces Moscow's leverage, sending a clear message that Ukraine is no longer Putin's gas hostage. And now, here to shed more light on the issue is Wojciech Jakubik, Energy Security Analyst at the Energy Security Center. Hello, sir, and welcome to Eastern Express.
Hello, great to be here.
So there's no illusion that, well, since the war began in Ukraine, they've been looking to diversify their energy supplies. But adding Azerbaijan into the mix, which was a country that was kind of associated to be close to Russia before their relation deteriorated, do you think that this is going to be a very significant development?
It is really important for the energy security of Ukraine because it is looking for natural gas anywhere it can in front of incoming winter. The heating season is always a challenge for Ukraine, especially after Russia has attacked so many energy facilities, including the gas storage facilities. So Ukraine is aiming at reaching around 12 BCM of energy storage in gas storage facilities ahead of winter. It is having around 9 BCMs. So Ukraine imports from different sources, from different parts of the world. And one of the answers is Azerbaijan. The challenge might be that the physical supplies might come from Russia because in the same time, the Azeris are selling more natural gas to the Western world and buying more Russian gas from Russian Federation. So there is this huge discussion among the experts in Poland, in Ukraine, in Central and Eastern Europe, if this Azeri gas is really coming from Azerbaijan or is it an intermediate imports from Russia? You have some similarities to this discussion with Kazakh oil supplies to Germany, which are coming through Russia, coming through the Russian pipelines, and it could be somehow Russian oil supply when it comes to the physical qualities of this supply. So the priority is the security of supply. The more natural gas Ukraine gets ahead of winter, the more secure it is in times of constant attacks on energy infrastructure from Russia. And that is why this soccer deal is really important.
Right, so it does seem like Ukraine do need to stockpile a lot of energy before winter hits. But you also brought up a very important topic about whether or not a lot of these kind of alternative diversification is just a rerouting of a Russian energy, or perhaps Russians selling it to the Azerbaijanis, and then they sell their energy to the Western world, which is a roundabout way of going at it. Do you think that the recent proposal from Donald Trump, for example, like the secondary sanctions, is something that is preferable to really cut off Russia's war machine when it comes to their funding source, or is it going to provide such a big problem for energy security that is not really feasible for Western countries?
So secondary sanctions on Russian oil are aimed at increasing the economic pressure on Russia, not on limiting the supply. Again, we don't have an embargo on Russian oil everywhere around the world. We have the UK, US, Australian embargo on oil. We have also something like that in place in the European Union. But anyone in India or China can get Russian supply by meeting some criteria. First, it is the maximum oil price introduced by G7, including US. And second, it is the secondary sanction regime that could be introduced. That would mean an increased price of Russian supplies to third countries, like 50% or maybe 100% tariffs on Russian oil. Doesn't mean that this oil is not flowing. It is more expensive. So Russian coffers get less money, and it is another way of increasing the pressure. But of course, by increasing this pressure, US is also promoting its own hydrocarbons. And looking at lately arranged deal between US and EU, we could see increased exports of US LNG, US oil to Central and Eastern Europe, including Ukraine. After this so-called deal, we could hear something new about the Orlen Naftogaz deals, because we have several imports of LNG through Poland to Ukraine, and this LNG is coming from US. We are still waiting for a big deal on long-term imports through Świnoujście in Poland to Ukraine, and it could also involve American LNG. So this new sanction policy against Russia, connected with new economic cooperation between US and Europe, could result in some new interesting deals.
Right, and how do you think Russia is going to perceive this kind of new development between Ukraine and Azerbaijan? Do you think that, they would not be happy about them diversifying their energy sources? Or do you think that, they're essentially just rerouting Russian energy? It's pretty much the same thing.
Ukraine, which is more secure when it comes to the security of natural gas supply, which is not coming directly from Gazprom, is not a gain for Russia. It is Russia losing its influence, because Russia is using natural gas to gain some influence in internal policy of countries in Central and Eastern Europe, like Armenia, like in the past it was with Ukraine. Now, such deals between previous Soviet republics is something against Russian interest, even if some part of this natural gas is physically coming from Russia. Russia is not the part of this deal. It is not getting any money from it. It is not getting any influence from it. So from the Ukrainian perspective, it is a clear victory against Russian interest and more security of supply. But in ideal world, we would wish all the Russian hydrocarbons export to cease until the war is over, but we are not in this moment yet.
Right, so like you mentioned, this perhaps is a hit to the Russians as well, but do you think that this is going to further deteriorate the relationship between Russia or Azerbaijan, or at this point it just doesn't matter anymore?
So in the end, Russia and Azerbaijan are competing hydrocarbon powers, because they compete in oil market, they compete when it comes to natural gas supplies. It needs to be reminded that European Union is looking to the southern corridor, so the line of pipes from Caspian Sea through Azerbaijan, through Turkey to EU, as one of the means to diversify away from Russia. And we already have a part of the southern corridor, which is connecting Azeri hydrocarbons with the European market. It could be further developed, and such deals like the one between Azeris and Ukrainians are showing a clear business incentive behind. We also have some strategic incentive. So developing the energy ties between the Western world and Azeris is hurting Russian interest and would deteriorate the relations between Baku and Moscow. And we also see some heavy political context of deterioration between those countries. We are seeing bad relations between Vladimir Putin and Ilham Aliyev. We have the case of downed airplane. So there are many important things going on that are moving Russians and Azeris not closer to each other, but they are putting some challenges between them.
You also mentioned there's a lot of incentives being discussed, about strategy being planned. Do you think that even though the gas coming from Azerbaijan to Ukraine right now is not really substantial, it's a sign of larger things to come, and perhaps tests of feasibility for the diversification?
Mm-hmm. So Russia had this line that after seizing Russian gas supplies to Ukraine, there is nothing in future. There is no future for Ukrainian gas market. And now we see that in spite of the war ongoing, Ukraine is an active natural gas player in the region. It is looking for strategic partnerships like with Azeris, but also with Poles, with Americans, with the countries of Central and Eastern Europe, and having the biggest energy storage facilities, the gas storage facilities in Ukraine, it could be a huge player on our common market. It needs to be underlined that Ukraine is also a part of a European gas market. It entered the European Union in the natural gas market by harmonizing the law, by introducing the standards, and by market coupling. So they are in different place right now, and deal with Azeris is showing that in spite of everything wrong that is happening in Ukraine right now, it is an active player. It is a subject, not an object of gas policy, and it could go against Russian interest in this manner by cooperating with the Western powers and powers like Azeris.
All right, thank you so much for breaking all that down for us. Really appreciate it. And thanks for being with us on Eastern Express.
My pleasure.
Cheers.
Anytime. Bye.
And now we're moving on to the Eastern News Flash, a series of all the other stories from the East that you don't want to miss. The Moscow exchange shed $1.4 billion in market value as U.S. President Donald Trump moved up his Ukraine peace deal deadline. Trump shortened the previous 50 days to just 10 to 12.
Initially, Donald Trump gave Moscow until September 2nd to make peace with Kyiv under the threat of heavy economic sanctions. Following the most recent announcement about moving the deadline up, he also threatened not just new sanctions, but also secondary tariffs should Russia ignore the ultimatum. The Russian stock exchange is already reeling from the news, as the shares of several prominent Russian companies such as Gazprom and Aeroflot plunged by as much as 4%. For now, the Kremlin has been showing no signs of backing down, and has reiterated that it would continue its campaign in Ukraine until all of its war aims were achieved. Trump's decision to tighten the peace deal deadline comes as a further U-turn in policy, which in early 2025 had been criticized as very favorable towards the Russians.
The chairwoman of the Russian Federation Council, Valentina Matviyenko, has been taking part in international parliament speaker events in Switzerland. The Russian official's plane was allowed to land in the country despite imposed sanctions.
Matviyenko used the opportunity to justify Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine and reiterated common Kremlin propaganda tropes about the Donbass war. She also called for defending peace despite Russia being the aggressor in Ukraine and refusing to come to the negotiating table to reach an acceptable peace deal. She, along with a couple other Russian parliamentary officials, will be staying in Switzerland until July 30th. Matviyenko is expected to take part in the 6th World Conference of Speakers of Parliament organized by the Interparliamentary Union. This is not her first trip to Switzerland, as she had visited the country in 2016 despite imposed sanctions. Back then, the Russian embassy in the country had to obtain a special permit for her arrival.
Estonia has summoned Russia's chargé d'affaires over a violation of territorial water. A Russian border patrol vessel reportedly entered the waters east of the Venlu island without permission.
Russia does not seem to care much when it comes to respecting the borders of other nations, be it on land or at sea. The recent case of the border patrol vessel violating Estonia's territorial waters is the first time that a Russian vessel has done so in 2025. The ship reportedly remained in Estonian waters for 35 minutes before finally departing. Under Estonian law, a foreign military vessel may pass through the country's territorial waters only if it is conducting a so-called innocent passage, of which it must notify the Estonian Foreign Ministry at least 48 hours in advance. The Russian vessel had not provided such a notice. The situation in the Baltic Sea is tense in the wake of last year's sabotages of crucial submarine telecom cables. The authorities of countries such as Finland, Estonia and Poland have become very sensitive when it comes to Russian vessels showing up where they're not supposed to be.
And that's all for this episode of Eastern Express. But for more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.